Hello and welcome to the first of what I hope will be a regular series of videos that I put on YouTube called Wellbeing Wednesdays. The videos will be published on Wednesdays. Eventually, they may actually be live streamed on Wednesdays. They are part of an overall thing that I'm trying to put together for people who are interested in health and well-being. And these fit with what I'm doing on my Twitch channel. My Twitch channel is Sally HP, where I do live stream. On Mondays, I have Meditation Mondays, and Tuesdays is Tai Chi Tuesdays. For those of you who don't know me, I am absolutely passionate about empowering people to take care of themselves, because there is so much that people can do, things that don't cost an awful lot of money and don't even need to take an awful lot of time, that once people have got into the swing of doing them, they really do help your overall health and well-being. I am fully trained and accredited and insured and everything, can show certificates, can show the insurance in a number of different techniques. The ones I mainly do online are meditation, mindfulness meditation, Tai Chi Qigong, but I'm also an accredited life coach, and a lot of the life coaching techniques are so applicable to people who are trying to get their health and well-being sorted out, because life coaching tech is about anyone and applicable for anyone who feels they need to make a change. Now, traditionally, life coaching is thought of in terms of, I want a new career, I want a good relationship, I want a whole new life. But in fact, making simple changes like, I know I need to alter my diet, I know I need to work exercise into my life. These are also things that can be covered by life coaching. Now, while anyone can, and I hope will, benefit from what I talk about, both in these videos and also on my Twitch streams, really I am talking to anyone who is a carer, paid or unpaid, and there are so many unpaid full-time carers around, and also anyone who, like me, has had COVID and has taken much longer than expected to actually shake off the effects of that infection. So, what I want to talk about in these YouTube videos is general health and well-being techniques. And where I want to start, and this is because my main technique really is mindfulness, is I would like to talk through the attitudes of mindfulness. When you mention mindfulness, people always think mindful meditation, and yes, great. Meditation is a great form of mindfulness, but you don't have to sit and meditate. But actually, any form of mindfulness practice is literally practice. for developing skills that are really useful for those times when life decides to go wrong. Now, I have a little certificate somewhere which says I am a stress management counsellor. And people often around to think, oh, you never get stressed. Wrong. I get horrendously stressed at times. I get things that happen that do cause stress, where stress, to give it its technical term, you're stressed if you're looking at a situation and you're thinking, I can't cope with this. I don't have the resources to cope with this. I can't see, how I'm going to deal with this. The attitudes of mindfulness can help you change your perspective, because any problem can probably be broken down into smaller parts, and simply breaking it down into smaller parts makes it easy to cope with. That's something that we can probably come on to in another video. But for today, I just want to talk through the attitudes of mindfulness as discussed by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who really was the founding father of modern mindfulness practice in the Western world. Although let's not forget, we need to acknowledge mindfulness has very, very Buddhist roots. It's got its roots in a very, very esoteric tradition where meditation was, kind of automatic and part of what people did. And I can't pass without acknowledging the great work of a Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh, who sadly died a few months back, who basically was a Buddhist monk who got exiled by the Chinese, because that's what they do. And he was the one who brought mindfulness to the Western world. And Jon Kabat-Zinn incorporated what he learnt through his own personal meditation and yoga practice and brought it into the medical world and kind of codified it. So, what are the attitudes of mindfulness? That mindfulness is about practicing them. Excuse the bit of croaky voice. That is sadly an overhang from my COVID infection back in April. So, there are 7 or sometimes 9 attitudes of mindfulness. I'm just going to briefly go through the traditional 7 and discuss each of those, and then I'll mention the final 2 that Jon Kabat-Zinn added in later days. So, the attitudes of mindfulness, the attitudes that underpin a successful mindfulness practice, but are also so helpful in life generally, are acceptance. Now, this does not mean resignation. This does not mean that if you're in a really crappy situation, you have to just kind of give in and say, oh, I can't do anything. Far from it. The best example of something that we all had to accept happened in late 2019 and early 2020, and it's called the COVID pandemic. None of us had any control over that. Suddenly, all our lives were completely upturned. Everything we knew in terms of what we could do just got thrown out the window. And really, all we could do was just accept it. And what acceptance means doesn't mean you've got to like it. But it means you say, okay, I don't like this, but I can't change it. So there's no point in getting stressed or getting angry or upset about the situation. I've just got to work with where I am. Now, acceptance is actually something that's at the core of the Alcoholics Anonymous program, where they start every meeting with a thing called the Serenity Prayer, which basically says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Accepting something when you've realised you can't change it stops an awful lot of stress. Because if you're constantly railing about what your ex is doing when you can't change what your ex is doing, or what the government is doing when you can't really change what the government is doing, or anything else, all you're doing is getting yourself very angry, very fired up. You will get all the stress chemicals circulating around your body, and you'll make yourself feel. You just make yourself feel bad. And that just adds to the situation. The situation is making you feel bad, but then you're adding another layer of badness on top of it by being really upset and by just saying, oh, this needs to be different, when actually you can't change anything. So acceptance is a very important thing. Patience. Patience is another very important, well, all the attributes are important. Patience is basically the one that's just come into my mind now. In a world where you're encouraged to do everything yesterday, and where the idea of patiently saving up to get something, in a world where instant gratification is what you're taught to expect, does not come easy. But being patient means that, especially when you're trying to make changes in your life, whatever the change is, it means you accept, I'm going to make mistakes. Because everybody does. Everybody makes mistakes when they try something new. You never get it right first time. I forget which golfer it was, who, one of the really well-known ones, I've forgotten the name, who basically someone said to him, you get really lucky with your golf shots. To which he replied, yes, you don't. The funny thing is, I discover the more I practice, the luckier I get. But practice takes patience. Nobody is an instant expert. It needs patience and repetition. And that means accepting that you will make mistakes. When you make mistakes, it's very easy to judge yourself, to think you shouldn't make mistakes. And being non-judgmental is another very important attitude. And non-judgmental comes in two parts. Number one, we all have a little voice going through our mind that is telling us how awful we are. It insults us in ways that we wouldn't let anyone else do. And it's this constant running commentary that says, you're awful, you're bad, you can't do this. And we've all got that voice. And that is a very, very judgmental voice. When you practice being non-judgmental, it is very important to note that that practice can help you silence that voice. Again, it takes practice to recognize that voice and acceptance of the fact that, you're not always going to be successful in silencing it, which needs patience. See how it all fits together? But the starting point is to be non-judgmental about yourself. When you're non-judgmental, you don't assume the worst. But the other thing is, when you're non-judgmental about yourself, it actually makes you less judgmental of other people. Because when you recognise your own failings, when you're dealing with other people, you're not going to be so quick to judge them. And as with most things, if you don't judge yourself, it makes you kinder to other people as well. Because that other person's also got that self-judgment going on in their heads that they don't really want. So, another good attribute in life and vital for mindfulness is having an open and curious mind of a child. Next time you're with a child, watch the child. The child sees fun and joy and adventure in most things. Very importantly, when a child is confronted with something new, they just go in. They're curious. They think, oh, what can I do with this? Now, obviously, quite often, sometimes the things they think they can do with it are quite dangerous and it needs adults around to say, no, don't do that. But they don't prejudge things. They don't go into any situation with an agenda that says, oh, this is going to be bad, or this person is going to be nasty to me. When you go into situations with an open and curious mind, you don't have an agenda. You just go into it thinking, okay, let's see what's going to happen. Let's see how this pans out. And when you go into situations like that, you open up so many more opportunities, because very often our judgments and preconceptions actually force us down roads that maybe we don't actually need to go down. Another really useful attribute in life, and a very important attribute in mindfulness, is one that's very difficult for the Western mind to understand, and it's called non-striving. I think the best way I can put it into a concept that Western minds can understand is you work smarter, not harder. It isn't necessary to do everything at full tilt. Giving 100% of effort isn't necessarily going to improve things. And it's quite possible to overdo things. Best example I can think of here is if you embark on an exercise program, you've got yourself motivated thinking, right, I'm going to get fit, I am going to run 10 miles every week, when you've not run before. And you push yourself too hard and you end up injuring yourself. That is when non-striving comes in. Non-striving means, okay, you think, okay, I know I need to do more. It would be nice to maybe get to a point where I could run 10 miles a week. I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start by maybe jogging half a mile and seeing how I get on with that. Not thinking I've got to put 100% into it. Not thinking I've got to give this the maximum effort, because the maximum effort isn't always needed. And you can actually harm yourself if you do put maximum effort in. Sorry, I've just switched my phone because I want to remind myself what some of the other attributes are. Got them on my phone. I've got them on my phone as a reminder. So every time my phone goes onto lock screen, I see these, and it just gets me to stop and think about what they are. There they are, my lock screen on my phone. Another really, really important attribute to have is trust. How much do you trust yourself to make good decisions? When you start something, how much trust do you have in yourself? It is so important to trust yourself. It is so, so important to trust yourself. Because if you don't trust yourself, you're never going to trust other people. And if you don't trust yourself, others are going to sense that and they're not going to trust you. Now, we often don't trust ourselves because we look back at what's happened in the past and that judgmental voice says, oh, you're really bad at this. But silencing that judgmental voice, which takes practice and patience, and having an open and curious and childlike approach to the situation when it comes up again, means that you can trust yourself. Because you can trust that, maybe it doesn't have to always be like that. Maybe I can change things. Trust is really important in relationships. And it's one of the things that I often tell people. If you want to have good relationships with other people, there's one very, very important relationship you've got to master. You've got to have a good relationship with yourself. And that means trusting yourself. And the last of the initial 7 attributes is letting go. How much do you hold on to that argument that you had in the past? How much do you hold on to the feelings of anger that you have about a situation that you're in that you can't change? How much do you hold on to ideas that always used to work but this time haven't? But you do things that way because that's the way it's always been done. It's a really good one for politicians to master, letting go of ideas. We find it very difficult to let go of ideas because that means that we can be wrong. And we aren't allowed to be wrong, are we? Yes, we are. So letting go of ideas, letting go of things that don't serve us, whether it's habits, whether it's thoughts, whether it's attitudes, whatever it is, even whether it's deep held beliefs, letting go of things can stop an awful lot of pain and suffering. Now, these attitudes have their roots in the Buddhist Eightfold Path, really. And if you delve into Buddhism, you will find out that what the Buddha taught could be summed up and was summed up by him as, I teach suffering and the cure for suffering, and that is all. Now, he was using suffering in a very, 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 very wide meaning term. And for him, suffering was anything which wasn't good, which caused us stress, which caused us pain, which caused us bad emotions. That's suffering. And the way the Buddha saw everything was at the core of suffering is our attachment to the idea that, things shouldn't be this way. It is a sad fact of life that things will go wrong. Global pandemics will happen. Cost of living crises will and are happening. It is folly to assume that life is always going to go well. And what mindfulness and what these attitudes of mindfulness can help you do is find proactive, creative ways to look at and deal with things that cause you suffering in your own personal life. I'm not saying they're easy. I'm just putting them out there at the moment. And what I am also going to say is that the sort of techniques that I teach, things like meditation, mindfulness meditation, are really good practice for learning about yourself and seeing where you're being judgmental, seeing where, you're holding on to something that you need to let go of. But just imagine if you could walk into a situation without having spent time, working it all out in your mind by how you think it's going to go, and it's probably going to go badly. Think about how you could walk into a situation with no preconceived ideas, with no expectations, just open to see what happens, not expecting things to be good or bad, but just walking in and saying, well, let's just see what happens. And if you can't imagine doing that, then you probably really need to practice mindfulness. Now, I said I was talking mainly and specifically to people I can really relate to, carers, especially unpaid carers, people who have had COVID and are having a difficult time getting over it. For myself personally, one of the hardest things that I had to realise was, yeah, I have had COVID, and God, yes, it's really hit me. I kind of feel COVID has totally rewritten my body. And I've just had to accept that. And I've just had to develop patience and accept that, I will slowly improve. But it's going to take time. It's going to take patience, and I mustn't push myself too hard. And to stop judging myself because I haven't got back to full fitness. Carers, anyone who's a carer can probably relate to this, because being a full-time carer is absolutely dire. Because it's a thankless 24/7 task. And it probably isn't a task that you chose to do initially, but it was one that you grew into. Circumstances meant that, you couldn't walk away from this responsibility. You just had to accept it. And the thing that both carers and COVID sufferers have in common is the fact that your health and well-being is very fragile. And mindfulness and these attitudes of mindfulness can be so helpful in supporting your health and well-being. They're not going to take away the problems, but they're going to help you think about things in a more proactive way. Now, there are two more attitudes of mindfulness that Jon Kabat-Zinn added in. I'm not quite sure how much later, but they are now accepted. And those are gratitude and generosity. Now, gratitude can be a particularly hard one, because if you're a carer, you may not feel you've not got an awful lot to feel grateful about. Now, a few years back, I got contacted out of the blue by an old pharmacist colleague of mine who said, Sally, I don't know what to do. Our daughter has just been diagnosed with motor neurone disease. We're devastated. We just don't know what to do. We don't know how to cope. So I put my best therapist head on and had this conversation. And to this day, I can't really remember what I said. but something stuck. And a few weeks later, I checked back in with him, and he said, "Well, do you know what?" He said, "I remembered what you said, and every night before we settle down to sleep, my wife and I think back over the day, and we find one thing that we can be really grateful for." Gratitude, I don't want you to think of it in terms of Oliver Twist, that the poor little orphan should feel grateful for every little crumb he got. No, it's not like that. Gratitude means recognizing that even when things are bad, there will be things that go well. And we can focus, you can choose what you think about. A lot of what I do in mindfulness meditation is about helping realize that you can choose what you focus on. So if you can choose to focus on something that you can feel grateful for, or if you choose to focus on something that went really badly and that you've got lots of angry feelings about, just take a small guess which one is going to make you feel better in yourself. And it's now recognized that having a good gratitude practice, which sounds horribly Pollyanna-ish if you're old enough to remember the film Pollyanna, is actually really good for your health and well-being. Generosity tends to go with gratitude because when you realize you've got things to feel grateful for, however small, it makes you realize that you can also have generous attitudes towards other people. It's not generosity of money, although giving to charity and giving money is known to make people feel better. It's generosity with your time. It's generosity with your resources. I mean, an act of generosity is saying to a neighbour, "Come on in, have a cup of coffee and a chat." That's an act of generosity. In some ways, me doing these videos and my Twitch streams, that is me being generous because it's something that I can do. I said at the beginning of this, I'm absolutely passionate about empowering people to take control of their health and well-being. Now, I know that these techniques can be extremely helpful. And what I want to do is try to reach as many people as possible. And YouTube and Twitch have given me a platform where I can reach people from the comfort of my own bedroom without driving anywhere, and with minimal effort, non-striving on my part. And every time I do a stream, I think about a little tale I was told right at the start of my journey with these sorts of techniques back in 2007. A man was walking along a beach and it was filled with dead starfish. They'd been washed up by the tide and they were dying. And he walked and there were dead starfish anyway. I was thinking, oh heavens, this is awful. What can I do? A bit further down the beach, he came across a woman who was picking starfish up one by one and throwing them back in. And he looked at her and said, "Why are you doing that? You're not going to make much of a difference." She picked another starfish up, threw it back in and said, "Well, I made a difference to that one." So if you're watching this and something I've said has resonated, and if I've made a difference to you, that's wonderful for me because I'm trying to make a difference to people or help people to make differences for themselves. So, next Wellbeing Wednesday, the stream will be looking at, let's have a think. I think maybe we'll look at how your physical and mental well-being are totally interrelated, and discuss things like how your food can affect your mental health and how your mental health can affect your physical health and your pain, because it's all one. So I hope you found this interesting. If you have, and you're thinking, oh, this is really good, I'd like to show a little bit of financial support, which is not necessary, but if you do, I do have a Patreon page, and I'll put the details in the video. The details will be in the video when I publish it. And £1 a month. So all I'm asking is £1 a month, and that gives you access to these videos, and there will be specific content just for patrons. So what's your health and well-being worth? But if you can't give anything, that's totally okay. I totally understand. We're all struggling financially at the moment, and I do get it. And these streams will continue, these videos will continue, whatever. So in the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank yourself for taking the time to watch. And I want you to remember one very important thing. You matter. I know you matter. I want you to know that you matter. And when you know that you matter, you will take time to look after yourself. Because I have a very simple mantra that a lot of people have heard me say, which is self-care is never selfish. And that's something carers really, really need to remember. Self-care is never selfish. But you need to realise that you're worth taking care of, and that's where the attitudes of mindfulness actually come in, because if you're not being judgmental about yourself, you'll realise, hey, do you know what? I do deserve, 5 minutes to go outside and take a breath. You matter. I know you matter. I want you to know that you matter. I want you to know that you're special. I fully believe that everyone has within them a divine spark. And that divine spark means that whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever your age, creed, race, sexuality, politics, I don't care. If you're a human being watching this and you're understanding this, it means I have to honour that and show respect to you, which I do with one word. Namaste. Hope to see you next time.